Are the Cardinals really an option for Milan Momcilovic? Well, multiple national media members believe so. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Coming up on today's show, we're going to have another weekly mailbag episode. Questions regarding Tague Davis's historic season, an interesting Flory Bidunga interview at the NBA Draft Combine, and we will answer the same question that we answered in the weekly mailbag part 1. Yes, we're going to answer the same exact question that we already answered just 24 hours ago because of new information. Well, rather the doubling down on certain information from a national media member has sparked this question to be brought back up. And considering that it seems like more and more buzz is growing nationally, we might as well have an entire segment where we kind of discuss the situation. This question is, are you sure that Milan Momcilovic isn't an option for the Louisville Cardinals? Now, we answered this on Thursday. If you're an everydayer of the show, then if you tuned in to yesterday's show, you remember that I said that, well, nothing is impossible, but I have my doubts. I've got to see it to believe it. And throughout this week, we've seen multiple national media members, not just one, but multiple. It started early in the week with the Field of 68. In a live episode, Rob Douster hinted at the idea that two of the schools from the state of the Bluegrass are working to pull Milan Momcilovic out of the NBA draft. Now, Momcilovic is in the transfer portal. He's the number 2 ranked player in the portal. Also, in the NBA draft, he does have till May 27th to withdraw, but I have my doubts that he's going to. More on that here in just one moment. But about 24 hours after that, Isaac Trotter, national basketball writer for CBS Sports, kind of echoed the same thing, but he added St. John's into the mix as well. And I believe Field of 68 brought that up too. And we answered the question on Thursday. And look, I said that I don't see it yet, right? It has to be like a perfect storm situation. Well, on Thursday, because the episode released early in the morning, on Thursday, Jeff Goodman, the Field of 68, doubled down on this idea that Louisville was involved. This is the exact quote. I think it's a no-brainer for Milan to go back to school. The two schools involved right now are St. John's and Louisville. I also think it's interesting that Adam Zagoria quoted that tweet and basically regurgitated what Goodman said and credited Jeff with the information. But it seems like with each passing day, we're getting some new development or report or rumor that consistently adds Louisville's name into the Milan Momcilovic conversation. And I'll be honest, I mean, if this is an actual option, you go all in. Momcilovic, 17 points per game, the best three-point shooter in the country last season, shot, these are still NBA 2K video game numbers, 49% from three on 7.5 attempts, 6'8", 225 pounds. Now, he's a three-point specialist, doesn't really do anything else at a great level, but we know how Pat Kelsey's system calls for a lot of three-point shooting, and Momcilovic would just make so much sense for this system. But with the new quote-unquote new development on Thursday, the question popped up again. So the first time it was like, are you sure that Milan isn't an option? And then Thursday progressed, and then it turned into, okay, are you sure that Milan isn't an option? Because at this point, well, the national media seems to think so. And that's that's what I find so interesting right now, is that this isn't coming from the local side. Like, if this was coming from Louisville sources, maybe then you could say, well, this might just be the agent telling the Cardinals what they want to hear so they could drive the price up. The issue with that idea is two things. Number one, all of the buzz is coming from the national media. Truthfully, it's a pretty stark contrast. Like, it's a huge difference because the Louisville side's been pretty quiet. Like, haven't even heard anything about this. And the second thing that you have to focus on is that Momcilovic has been pretty vocal that he'll stay in the NBA draft even if more money is offered from college. So it doesn't seem like finances are driving this decision. I think it's going to depend on where is Momcilovic likely going to get drafted. But if he comes back to college, he mentions that he wants to win. And fit and winning are going to matter more than money. Now, some people won't believe that, but it seems like that's, if you read between the lines, it would make sense, because at this moment, it seems like he is possibly going to stay in the draft. So I also think that there's three scenarios out there that probably most likely represent the outcome of why Louisville's being mentioned. The first possible scenario is that the information is wrong and that Louisville's not really an option. And I do have my doubts that Kentucky, who was possibly going to be the team that lands him 48 hours ago, all of a sudden it's Louisville and St. John's. Now, I understand that things change rapidly in the portal. What's true on Thursday might not be true on Friday, but it's, my goodness, it changed that much to where UK is just no longer in the picture. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I just don't buy it. And some people believe the Field of 68 more than others, but it's not just them. Field of 68, Isaac Trotter, Adam Zagoria quotes or tweets the message on Twitter, and I just thought that was interesting. So the first possible scenario is that the information is incorrect and that Louisville is not actually a serious option. The second likely scenario, and it's probably the one that I've believed the most up to this point, is that someone is trying to use leverage by having Louisville's name in the mix. And you think, well, why would the Cardinals' name be in the mix? And this happens all the time. This trend where a school that is known for spending a lot of money in a certain offseason or consistently is kind of automatically thrown on these quote-unquote lists to try to scare other teams to overpay or increase their offer. Tale as old as time. We see it all the time. It's leveraging 101. But where I've sort of walked back that opinion of mine is because of this idea that it's coming from the national side. And if he comes to Louisville, it's probably going to be a situation where he takes a pay cut. So that just doesn't really make sense. And then the third possible scenario is that there is truth and that there's actual smoke out there, that Louisville is a serious option for Milan Momcilovic. He would be a great fit for the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, I feel like, would be a great fit for Momcilovic. It's just, at this point, we don't know which of the three is actually the reason for why the Cardinals are being mentioned. And again, I sound like a broken record here, but got to see it. Got to see it to believe it. I have to see it more, right? Like, if we go through the weekend and national buzz continues to pick up after the combine has ended, yeah, at that point, let's start talking about why Louisville needs to go all in to land this guy. But at this point, it's interesting to the point where we have to discuss it. I have my doubts mainly because it seems like, from all accounts, he wants to stay in the NBA draft. Like, he's looking for a reason. Like, he's done with college ball, wants to go to the NBA. And the only way that he doesn't is if he doesn't like the feedback that he gets from the draft combine and ultimately ends up coming back to college. At that point, let's say if he doesn't stay in the draft, which I personally think he's going to at this point, if he doesn't, that's when you can have a legitimate conversation. even then, it had to be a perfect storm. Maybe it is. Maybe everything is coming together to where Momcilovic is buying into the vision that Pat Kelsey has for him in this system, with this roster, in this rotation. And Momcilovic is willing to do what he says and take a pay cut in exchange for landing with a better fit. Because, I think St. John's and Kentucky would probably overpay or outspend Louisville in this situation, but Cardinals were willing to go after John Blackwell. They were willing to go after Juke Harris. If they've identified Momcilovic as a player that they think can kind of, raise them into that very top contender group, maybe they can find the money to make things competitive and then sell Momcilovic on the idea. But that would have to be a perfect storm. And at this point, I'm a little less sure that Milan isn't an option, because you obviously have to wonder why he's being brought up so much and being linked with Louisville from the national side. But I still have my doubts. One thing that I really don't have my doubts on, however, is that Flory Bidunga is likely going to play for the Louisville Cardinals next season. He's going to withdraw from the NBA draft. I know some believe the opposite. And the start of this week, there was some anxiety, there were some concerns, and then Flory Bidunga answered a question in an NBA draft combine interview, and his answer stirred things up even more, made people even more nervous. We'll react to what he had to say when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast, especially in 2026, where managing your money is more important than it ever has been. That's where Rocket Money comes into play. When I switched to Rocket Money, it allowed me to take control of my finances all in one place immediately. And my only regret is that I didn't join sooner, because once I joined, I immediately was able to track all my subscriptions in one spot, and it allowed me to cancel the ones that I forgot that I even had subscribed and obviously didn't need. Not to mention, it automatically categorized my spending, so I saw where my money was going every month, and with that, I was able to set my budget, get alerts, and stay on top of my upcoming bills. It just honestly made everything feel more organized. It painted a clearer picture of my finances from a day-to-day perspective. Rocket Money is the perfect personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Card Nation, get Locked On Louisville ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access. Join at lockedonlouisville.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more. Okay, so the next question is one that has been asked a couple times. So I know that it is a huge topic that people want to discuss. And the question is, what do you think about Flory's comments in that viral NBA Draft Combine interview? So a little context. The NBA Draft Combine is going on right now. Multiple top players in college basketball are participating. One of them is the top player in the transfer portal, Louisville commit Flory Bidunga. Bidunga is participating in various drills, 5v5 scrimmages, but he's also answering questions in multiple interviews, because that is a huge part of the NBA Draft Combine, is that you get to go through interview processes and also get valuable feedback from various NBA teams. Now, let's rewind a couple days ago at the start of the week. I saw more and more on social media from Louisville fans that were getting antsy that Flory Bidunga hadn't officially announced that he was withdrawing from the draft, because it's like, okay, well, if he's going to Louisville and we think that he's going to play with the Cardinals next season, why would he still be in the draft? And there is a very clear reason why that we're going to discuss here in just a moment, but it was to the point where I felt like it had to be discussed. So we acknowledged those concerns on, I think it was Wednesday's show. Yes, Wednesday's show. But I explained why it's still unlikely that he's going to stay in the draft. I gave 3 reasons. We'll revisit those here in just a moment. But Flory Bidunga had an interview at the NBA Draft Combine, and Noah Weber asked the question about basically staying in the NBA draft or going to Louisville. And here is a little bit of what Flory had to say verbatim. I feel like it is a day-to-day. Obviously, I am here. It is an honor to be here, and I just want to hear from them. If I have a good seed, then the NBA is my dream, so I will probably be staying for sure. End quote. So if you are already nervous, you're probably even more anxious now. And even if you weren't, hearing that answer might have caused you to kind of raise your eyebrow and say, well, that's not necessarily a comforting answer from the number 1 player in the transfer portal. And I know that some people are worried because if Flory does end up staying in the draft, well, the chances of you being a title contender decrease significantly. And I don't disagree with that. I just still am believing that that it's very unlikely that he stays in the draft. Now, the 3 reasons why I thought it was unlikely. Number 1, this is a generational draft class that's being talked about, like the 2003 class and some other classes. You have multiple, and I mean multiple, star freshmen that are potential organizational altering pieces. Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansa, Caleb Wilson, Michael Brown Jr., Cam Boozer, Keaton Wagler, Kingston Flemings. The list goes on. The second reason is that he's not necessarily a prototypical NBA center. He measured in at 6'7" 3/4" with no shoes on. Now, great standing reach and great wingspan, but still 6'7" 3/4", doesn't have an outside game. All of his production offensively comes from around the rim. Now, really solid, versatile defender, elite level rim protector, but still older player that has some height limitations and some questions about his fit in the modern NBA. That usually doesn't lead to a guy being drafted in the lottery. And the third reason was that he's going to make a significantly more amount of money than he would getting picked in the mid to late 20s or even in the second round. So him coming back to Louisville and banking on himself would make the most sense. Now, of course, his dream is to get to the NBA, as it is most of the players that are in college basketball. And here's my thing. Even though, like, in a vacuum, the things that he said probably don't make you feel great. But when you factor context into the equation, I think 2 things in this situation are true or can be true. And also, these 2 things are true often. And that is that you can understand that you're probably going to go back to college, but still you go through the NBA draft process because you are awarded that opportunity now in 2026. This got passed a couple years ago to where you can maintain your college eligibility while going through the draft process. So why would you not take advantage of the opportunity? Like, people are wondering, well, why hasn't he withdrawn yet? Why would you forego the NBA draft combine where you are able to go through the combine process? You can learn what to expect. You can get valuable feedback. You can be in the same place as all the NBA scouts and showcase your talents. Because at the end of the day, if your dream is to get to the NBA, then you have to do whatever you have to do. But at the same time, you see players with the same goals, understanding that, hey, coming back to college just makes sense from a professional standpoint, from a financial standpoint. And also, it's like, what is he supposed to say? Like, is he supposed to say, no, I'm going back to Louisville? Like, if his goal is to get to the NBA, like that has been his goal since he started playing basketball. I want to get to the National Basketball Association. Well, if you're trying to get a draft promise or get drafted as highly as you can, answering that question like, oh yeah, I'm going back to Louisville, I'm just here to get feedback, you don't gain anything. That's the thing about interviews. You have to understand some answers are kind of like formalities, right? Like when a coach is asked about a team that is clearly not as good as his that they're about to play, some of the things that you'll hear are, well, we've got to be on our A game. They're very well coached. We have to be prepared. If we're not, we could get surprised. When in reality, they theoretically could say, no, we're going to beat them by 50. It's going to be a running clock by the fourth quarter. You don't hear that because that's not how interviews go. And in this situation, it's kind of like the same thing. Maybe that's apples to oranges, but the sentiment remains the same. There's a certain aspect of interviews that you can't tip your hand, right? You can't lose all your leverage. And I don't, until I hear more from the local side, and by the way, Louisville side still seems very, very confident. I still think he's going to be a Louisville Cardinal next season. Speaking of someone that I think is going to be a Louisville Cardinal next season, Tague Davis. Yes, I think he's a Louisville Cardinal for the remainder of his college career. Let's talk about it. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Card Nation, thank you so much for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Of course, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment in the YouTube section below. Both are great ways to help the show continue to grow. So we've got 3 questions left, and they are all Louisville baseball-related questions. The first one is, do you think that the Cardinals have wasted this historic season from Tague Davis? At this point, Louisville is close to a 500 record. The ACC tournament is next week. And yeah, if they don't make the tournament, 100% you wasted a historic season. Kind of like a couple years ago when Henry Davis had a great season, got drafted number 1 overall in the MLB draft. You didn't make the tournament that season. That is a failure of a season. That is a waste of a great individual season. Tague Davis is having arguably the best season in program history. ACC all-time leader in home runs. Program all-time leader in RBIs. He's chasing the NCAA single-season record. Not getting to the NCAA tournament is a huge, huge issue. You're wasting Tague Davis's season. But not only his, but potentially Zion Rose's last season in college, potentially Lucas Moore's last season in college, and a couple of other players that might not be back next season. So you had such high hopes going into this year, and the pitching has let you down. The pitching has completely let you down. More on that coming up here in just a moment. This was a 2-part question because the second part was, do you think he's going to leave? I don't. I think he's going to stay. Now, you heard the interview earlier this week about how Dan McDonnell admitted that schools are DMing Tague Davis to try to get him into the portal. Tague mentioned that, it's not really all about NIL and money for me. It's about the relationships built. It's about going somewhere that I believe in the values of the program. It's going somewhere where I can develop. And look, I'm not going to be one that ever claims to have inside information when I don't. But from what I've been led to believe, I'd be shocked if Tague is not back. I think they're going to make it work financially for him, but I believe that Tague wants to be here, and Louisville will do anything to make sure that he stays a Cardinal throughout the remainder of his college career, which is likely one more season, because if he would have been draft eligible this year, he's probably a top 3 pick in the MLB draft this summer. If he has a season half as good as the one that he's having right now, he's going to be a surefire first-round draft pick next summer. But no, I do not think that he's going to leave. The final question is, with how bad the Cardinals pitching is and how bad it's been over the past couple of seasons, should Louisville make coaching changes? Some are going to ask if Dan McDonnell should get fired. I don't think so. I think that McDonnell should not be let go. But I do think, and I never like to call for anyone's job, but I think it's time for a change with the pitching coaching and pitching philosophy, because whatever is happening, it's not working. And you have a good amount of sample size, right? Like, barring one kind of miraculous run at the end of the season last year where the pitching just kind of came together and was lights out. Now, granted, you had Patrick Forbes, who was a first-round draft pick. Ethan Eberle was really good in the postseason. You also had Tucker Biven as well, reliever turned high-end weekend starter. And then your pin arms were really reliable. Jake Schweitzer, Wyatt Danielewicz, Justin West, the list goes on. Well, the pitching kind of regressed back to what we've known it to be over the past couple of seasons this year. Truthfully, you haven't had like one lockdown pitcher. You went to the portal to add a pitcher who isn't even in the weekend rotation. Eberle, I think, is pitching better as of late. Your best pitcher this season has been Wyatt Danielewicz, who had to be a starter. He was a bullpen guy, got turned into a starter. You rotated who was the Sunday starter. Midweek, you got torn up against less talented opposition. And your offense felt like you had to score 8+ runs a game just to win because your pitching was so unreliable. Is this an issue of instruction, of pitch calling, of development, of geographical recruiting radius, of types of players that you're recruiting? I don't know. But it's clear that something has to change, because this is a program that is on its way to missing yet another tournament in the 2020s. The hitting is fine. Hitting is great. Offense has been fantastic. But I think that Louisville has to switch some things up. And it's not just like coaching. It's the recruiting philosophy. You know that they recruit Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, those areas really well. Maybe it's time to expand that recruiting footprint and begin to begin to kind of cast a wider net in recruiting and add more players. Now, again, maybe it's not a geographical issue. Maybe it is, I don't want to say it's too much of an NIL problem, because, I mean, I think that you have the NIL to compete because you look at the bats that you've got, but the pitching, I mean, you decided not to go to the portal. You decided to stick with the same guys that you had, and the decision just did not pan out. And it's frustrating because I love the Louisville baseball program. I mean, college baseball is at its best when the Louisville Cardinals are great. So I think that Louisville should make coaching changes, but I don't think it should be a head coaching change. So that is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. We'll be back here on Monday. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you back then. Coming up on Monday. Go Cards.